Last year, Google announced its new AI-powered search engine, SGE, and this thing is wild. And the folk from Google got very excited about it, declaring that this was the future of search. Obviously, such a big change to search is huge news for marketers. And SGE is projected to be the biggest change in search since forever. Some websites were even predicted to lose as much as 95% of their organic traffic, whereas others might actually see huge gains. Well, at Exposure Ninja, we figured out how to rank in this thing before it was even released, and we were the first agency in the world to share the exact process that we used, along with case studies to help our own websites and our clients' websites rank in this brand new type of search. But here we are, almost a year later, and SGE still hasn't launched publicly. And then Google dropped a blog post with a very cryptic sentence, which some in the marketing industry read to mean that SGE has been dropped entirely, as in Google's never going to bring this thing out. So here's the thing, if SGE is released, this is huge news for marketers, we'll need to adapt. If SGE isn't released, this is also huge news for marketers, because Google will start to lose market share to ChatGPT, and marketers will need to adapt. So either way, marketers will need to adapt. The big question is, in which direction? Do we need to be ready for SGE or not? Well, the good news for you is that I have trawled through hours of Google investor calls and presentations to look at exactly what Google is saying to its investors about the future of SGE. So we know exactly what to expect and the future that us marketers need to be prepared for. So in order to understand what's going to happen in the future, we need to do a quick history lesson. Way back in November 2022, ChatGPT was released. Pretty quickly, people started predicting that this thing was going to kill Google. People like this guy, who has a little credibility given that he invented Gmail. In January, Google announced a code red, bringing back its founders from semi-retirement into the company to figure out how they were going to deal with this threat from chatbots like ChatGPT. In April, Google announced a new type of search engine, codenamed Project Magi. In May, at their developer conference, they showcased the first version of SGE. They did some demos to show how it worked. In August, they expanded it to India and Japan. In November, they continued expanding it, rolling out to another 120 new countries in testing mode. It's coming. Also in November, Exposure Ninja released our guide on how to rank for this, including some videos and webinars. We showed examples and gave demos and specific instructions in how to rank in this new chat search. In December, SGE was expected to end its testing phase. Marketers around the world braced themselves. They opened their presents on Christmas morning, knowing that this might be the last time they got to spend time with their families for a very long time, when the SGE tsunami came and everyone's websites needed to be re-optimized for this brand new tool. And then nothing. And then in January, Google released a blog post. Now the blog post was mainly about their new circle to search feature, but right at the bottom of the post, there were a few lines about SGE, and this one in particular got a lot of attention. We'll continue to offer SGE in labs as a testbed for bold new ideas. Wait, this sounds like SGE staying in labs in testing mode. Are they going to release this thing at all? To be honest, the SEO world reacted with joy. We won't have to change what we do. We won't have to go back and optimize anyone's website. Everything's just going to continue as normal. Okay, so I actually quite like SGE, but saying SGE is not perfect is a bit like saying government's not perfect. This thing is full of lies and plagiarism and holes, and it's really easy to manipulate. We've shown that it's really easy to manipulate. I am talking about SGE, not government. So many of us wondered how Google was going to fix SGE before rolling it out. And then there's the $48 billion question. What about ads? We weren't seeing Google testing ads that much inside SGE. And they're not going to roll out a new search product unless there is ads to go in there, because that's where they make their money to do the other dumb stuff. So what's going on? Is Google actually killing off SGE? Well, luckily for you, I spend my time scouring through investor calls, and I think that there are some clues in the transcripts of those calls, particularly the Q&A sections with the investment analysts, that give us an indication of the future of SGE and the future that we marketers need to prepare ourselves and our clients for. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're a marketing manager in a company and your agency isn't helping you with SGE and giving you the lowdown on what's up with it, you may want to consider whether your agency is on the forefront enough to actually help you navigate this incredibly tumultuous time in search. If it's not, if you've got that niggling doubt, then request a free website and marketing review from the team here at Exposure Ninja. We'll take a look at your website and your SEO and other areas of your digital marketing and show you the areas that we think you should be putting most energy into over the next 6 to 12 months. Now, if you're eligible for this free review, we'll send you a video, usually 15 to 20 minutes long, by email and usually within a week. Did I mention it's totally free? Alright, so what's going on in these earnings calls then? Well, let's go back to our timeline. There's been 3 Google earnings calls since SGE has been announced. And let's examine some of the language and sentiment that Google uses in these earnings calls when it talks about SGE. In July, just after SGE was released, Google's CEO Sundar was incredibly bullish. He called SGE the next major evolution in search and said that over time, this will just be how search works. In October, he and Google were still pretty bullish, this time talking about how they were experimenting to bring ads into SGE. But when an analyst from Morgan Stanley asked if there were any indications about whether SGE was bringing higher user engagement, Sundar was a little more cagey, saying, "I've been pretty pleased with how the user feedback has been on SGE." Another analyst, this time from UBS, asks how far along Google is rolling SGE out. Sundar replies, saying the product is working well and SGE improves user experience. So far, so good. But then came December and the time when we thought Google was going to announce a rollout date for SGE. This rollout date never arrived. In Google's earnings call in late January, the mood was noticeably more subdued. Google said they're still experimenting with different ad formats in SGE, but Sundar has gone from saying this is just how search is going to work to saying it clearly works for a certain type of queries very well. We're expanding the set of queries where it works very well. He goes on to say it definitely is answering a certain category of queries for the first time in a better way. So that gives us a direction to proceed as well. Now, to my knowledge, this is the first time that Google has admitted SGE doesn't work that well for all queries, which of course opens up the possibility that it can't risk rolling it out. But then comes the killer question, the question I think that will define Google's strategy with SGE more than anything else. Justin Post basically asks whether Google's search volumes are being impacted by other AI tools being on the market like ChatGPT. Sundar dodges that question like he's in the Matrix. He starts talking about Google's history of innovation and the progress that they're making. So let's just be 100% clear here. ChatGPT and its friends like Perplexity are an existential threat to Google. There are plenty of searches where one of these tools actually gives you the answer to your question in a more bespoke and a faster way than trawling through a list of websites given by Google. So if Google doesn't respond by giving something similar to these tools in its search results, users will eventually migrate over to these other platforms. Now, that's not to say that no one will use Google. There are still times when it's much easier and faster to use Google. Have you tried finding a product via ChatGPT, for example? Nightmare. But based on all the evidence from Google and our own experience with SGE, here's where I think this thing is going in the future. When you use Google, its algorithms decide on the most useful type of results to show you. For example, if I search football boots for wide feet, Google knows that there is an element of commercial to this search, which is why it's showing me sponsored shopping ads. But it also knows there's a bit of a research intent to this phrase, so it's giving me websites, people also asked, and then videos to help me make a decision. When you search for the weather, Google knows that that search can very simply be answered by just giving you a piece of information. Ta-da! When you search for something like best hairstyles for mid-length wavy hair, Google knows that you're probably looking for images, you're looking for inspiration. So it shows you a bunch of pictures. It also shows you discussions and forums, individual perspectives. Then you've got this tab up here, the Perspectives tab, which shows you first-person user-generated content perspectives on this topic, because there are some times where you actually want to go and see what individual people are saying about a topic. And sometimes when you search, you get Google showing you different ideas taken from different websites around the internet, like this search here where we've got a bunch of ideas and I can click to see websites that list those ideas. Sometimes when you search, a featured snippet that gives you the answer is really useful. But sometimes you want a little bit more context than a featured snippet. And in this case, a generative AI answer is pretty good. It takes information from different websites and combines them into a sort of super featured snippet. And I can see SGE being used in this sort of context, being another type of result that Google can show users if it's relevant to the search. And I think that's why Google is keeping SGE in labs. Remember, an SGE result costs about 10 times as much for Google to generate as a regular search result. So by keeping SGE in labs, Google can see how often people are clicking on this little generate button and for which types of searches. So it can then bake that information, bake that user data into the regular search results and make a better assessment of the types of search that SGE is really useful for. So what do us marketers need to do about all of this? Well, my advice is this: you still need to learn about SGE. I think we are going to see SGE in the search results in some format at some point, because this is too important for Google not to have an AI generated search result play given the competition from ChatGPT and co. So you also need to keep up to date with what Google is doing and testing. Now you can subscribe to the Exposure Ninja channel because we're looking at this stuff all the time and we share everything that we learn with you. So we'll keep you up to date. We'll let you know how to optimize for the new tools that Google is bringing out. But I would also advise you to learn how to optimize your website for SGE. That way, when this thing does come out in whatever format it takes, you're not going to be starting from scratch. You're going to know how to optimize for it, how to get your website featured in the SGE answers. So watch this video to learn exactly how to rank in SGE. And don't forget to subscribe to the Exposure Ninja channel. We're doing a whole bunch of research this year about how to get your website ranked and recommended in all types of AI generated search, things like ChatGPT, but also new tools like Perplexity. Until next time, see you soon.